Well, hello there, and welcome to my kitchen table, a place in most homes where we can sit and talk for hours with family and friends, putting the world to rights, as my dad used to say. I was planning on starting all of my videos with a little bit about the area, the crime, or the story originated. You know what I mean? Sights to see, population, main money earner, industry. But with this one, I'm going to get right to it. So, take a seat whilst I tell you a story. She was labelled Angel of Death by UK tabloids, although I never understood that title, because she certainly is no angel. She was born on October 4th, 1968, and grew up in the village of Corby Glen, near the town of Grantham in Lincolnshire, which is in the East Midlands of England. She had two sisters and a brother. Her father, Richard, worked in an off-licence, and her mother was a school cleaner. She attended Charles Reed Secondary Modern School after failing the entrance test to Stephen and Grantham Girls' School, which is a pretty elite school in that area. Beverley Allitt is one of Britain's most notorious female serial killers. Her murderous spree was all the more shocking because she would befriend the parents of her victims who entrusted their children into her care. As a child, Allitt would use fictitious injuries in order to gain attention. She'd wear bandages and plaster casts on wounds, and yet she wouldn't allow anybody to take a look at them. As a teenager, an overweight Beverley began spending an excessive amount of time in hospitals with numerous physical complaints. At one point, she convinced a surgeon to remove a perfectly healthy appendix. How the hell does that happen? This surgery took an inordinate amount of time to heal. Maybe because she was picking at the stitches. When a doctor realised what she was doing, as in doctor shopping or doctor hopping, she'd move onto the next doctor or onto the next hospital. You see, here in the UK, we have the National Health Service, which is paid for out of our taxes. So you can go to any hospital that you want to, any doctor that you want to. It's paid for. You don't end up with a big bill at the end of it all. She attended Grantham College in Lincolnshire and trained as a nurse. Her strange behaviour continued throughout her training. While working in a nursing home, she was suspected of smearing faeces on the wall. Now, for those that are familiar with this case, this next bit will shock you because it shocked me. And I thought I knew everything about this case. Her attendance during her training was poor due to her many illnesses. And as a result, she failed her nursing examinations. But she was still able to obtain a 6-month temporary contract at the severely understaffed Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire. No, not as a cook. No, not as a cleaner. No. But as a state-enrolled nurse, where she was assigned to Children's Ward 4. I can hear you now. What? You mean she wasn't qualified? No, she wasn't qualified. She wasn't qualified to do anything at all. And they gave her the job of a nurse. I personally hope they sacked and prosecuted the person responsible for hiring this bitch. On February 21st, 1991, 7-week-old Liam Taylor was admitted to the ward with possible pneumonia. Allitt had reassured his parents that he was in capable hands and he would be well cared for. They went home for the night. When they returned the next morning, they were informed that little Liam had suffered respiratory problems through the night, but that he'd recovered and appeared to be doing well. The next night, Allitt volunteered for extra night duty. At one point during the night, she was left alone with little Liam. A moment later, Allitt summoned the code team. The code team are in all the wards, in all our hospitals. It's probably the same the world over, I don't know. They have an emergency button, which is usually a big red button by the door. Push that, and all kinds of specialists come running from all over the place. That's the code team. Liam had stopped breathing. Despite the efforts of the team, Liam had suffered severe brain damage and was being maintained on life support. Knowing that he would never recover, his parents made the heartrending choice to remove him from life support. His death was listed as heart failure, even though their fellow nurses were confused about the failure of the apnea monitor. It didn't alarm when Liam stopped breathing. Apnea is a temporary loss of breathing, for want of a better phrase. Should it occur in an infant in a hospital, such as Liam, then an alarm should go off. But it didn't. Someone had turned it off. Allitt was never questioned. 2 weeks later, 11-year-old Timothy Hardwick, who suffered from cerebral palsy, was admitted after suffering an epileptic seizure. Allitt volunteered to care for him. Within a few minutes of being left alone in her care, his heart stopped. And again, despite the efforts of the code team, they were unable to revive him. His death was attributed to his epilepsy, even though no obvious cause of death was found. Now, I'm sorry, but at this point, somebody somewhere should have said, hang on a minute, what do you mean, no obvious cause? Keep bloody looking. Something killed him. Or someone. On March 3rd, 1991, 1-year-old Kaylee Desmond was admitted to Ward 4 with a chest infection. Allitt was assigned as her nurse. She was well on the road to recovery when 5 days later, inexplicably, she went into cardiac arrest. She was successfully resuscitated and transferred to another hospital in Nottingham. Now, when she was examined, the doctors noticed a peculiar puncture mark in her armpit. It appeared to be an accidental injection and was never investigated. Accidental injection. Somebody must have slipped on the soap with a syringe in their hand and go, oh, sorry about that, kid. I don't think so. For God's sake. On March 20th, 1991, 5-month-old Paul Crampton was admitted for bronchitis. Shortly before he was discharged, he was taken care of by Allitt. He was nearly comatose, and when his blood was checked, he was found to have high levels of insulin. He suffered the same symptoms 3 more times before he was transferred to another hospital in Nottingham. When he arrived at the hospital, his blood was checked again, and again he was found to have high levels of insulin. Although the nurse that was sent with him in the ambulance for the transfer was Beverley Allitt. Miraculously, the little fella survived. March 21st, 1991. 5-year-old Bradley Gibson was admitted for pneumonia. Later that evening, he went into cardiac arrest, but was successfully resuscitated. When his blood was tested, he was found to have a high level of insulin. He was cared for again by Allitt, and his heart stopped again. After he was resuscitated, he was transferred to another hospital in Nottingham. Little Bradley survived too. Another miracle? Or just nurses that were actually qualified to do the job that they were being paid for? Sadly, no one was suspicious enough to connect anything to Allitt. She was free to continue wreaking havoc on poor, defenceless children and babies. March 21st, 1991. 2-year-old Yik Hung Chan was admitted to Ward 4 after falling from a window and suffering a skull fracture. While he was being cared for by Allitt, his oxygen levels dropped dangerously low, and he was transferred to a larger hospital in Nottingham. His symptoms were attributed to his head injury. April 1st, 1991. 2-month-old, yes, 2-month-old Becky Phillips was admitted with a stomach virus. While being cared for by Allitt, she began exhibiting symptoms of hyperglycemia, which is low blood sugar. She was examined, and finding nothing wrong, Becky was sent home with her mum and her dad. During the night, she went into convulsions, and when her parents contacted a doctor, they told her that she probably had colic. That poor little angel sadly died later that night. Right, I have to say, what the feck? I didn't go to medical school for 5.5 years or whatever it is, but I can tell the bloody difference between convulsions and colic. I really hope to God they sued that dickhead doctor. She was a twin. As a precaution, her twin sister, Katie, was admitted to Ward 4. Not long after being cared for by Allitt, she stopped breathing and had to be resuscitated. 2 days later, she stopped breathing again. This time she suffered permanent brain damage due to prolonged lack of oxygen. When she was transferred to another hospital, it was later found that her apneic spells had been the result of her receiving large doses of insulin and potassium. Katie's mother, Sue Phillips, was so grateful to Allitt for saving her baby's life that she asked her to be the baby's godmother. Beverley Allitt graciously accepted. That sick, twisted biatch had taken the life of one twin and permanently disabled the other, and accepts an invitation to be godmother. What the hell was she thinking? How sick is she? 4 more helpless victims fell prey to Allitt's vicious attacks, but it would be the death of 15-month-old Claire Peck that would bring her murderous spree to an end. Oh, thank you, Ted. On April 22nd, 1991, baby Claire was admitted to Ward 4 following a serious asthma attack that required her to be placed on a ventilator. After being left alone with Allitt, she suffered a cardiac arrest and had to be resuscitated. She was stabilised and then again left alone with Allitt. Shortly after, she suffered another heart attack, and this time the doctors were not successful. What that poor baby went through is just unthinkable. When an autopsy was performed, it was discovered that she had traces of lidocaine, which you may know as lignocaine, in her tissues. Now, besides being used by dentists to numb your gums when you're having a tooth out or a filling, it's a drug that is given to cardiac arrest victims, but never to a baby. When the police were finally notified, they examined the records of 25 suspicious cases. 25 suspicious cases. In most instances, the victims, four of whom were dead, either had high levels of insulin or potassium or both in their systems. The only common factor linking them all? Beverley Allitt. No shit, Sherlock. Allitt's motives have never been fully explained. According to one theory, she suffers from Munchausen syndrome, now called factitious disorder, and Munchausen syndrome by proxy, or factitious disorder imposed on another. Why the hell they had to change the names, goodness only knows. It's a controversial personality disorder. Again, no. Which prompts its sufferers to falsely claim to be ill and falsifies various illnesses in themselves or by proxy, meaning in others, all in order to gain attention. Allitt was charged with 4 counts of murder, 11 counts of attempted murder, and 11 counts of grievous bodily harm in November 1991. On Friday, the 28th of May 1993, she was found guilty on each charge and sentenced to 13 concurrent terms of life. Why the hell can't they do consecutive in the UK? This lunatic, unqualified nurse gets 13 concurrent life sentences. Basically, what that means is all the life sentences are all served at the same time. So it's just like getting one. The word concurrent should be removed from every court dictionary in this country in cases like this and replaced with the word consecutive. Allitt's trial judge recommended she serve a minimum term of 40 years, which is actually one of the longest terms ever suggested by a trial judge in the UK. It would keep her in prison until at least 2032, at the age of 64. Even then, she could only be released if she was no longer considered to be a danger to the public. Mr. Justice Latham, sentencing, told Allitt that she was a serious danger to others and was unlikely ever to be considered safe enough to be released. So why didn't you give her a whole life tariff? You're the judge, you tit. In August 2006, Allitt launched an appeal on the length of her sentence. On the 6th of December 2007, the High Court ruled that Allitt would only have to serve 30 years before she became eligible for parole, meaning that she would have to wait till 2022 and the age of 54 until she could apply for parole. Although the appalling nature of her crimes placed her on the Home Office list of criminals who will never be eligible for parole. Well done, Home Secretary. Never thought I'd hear myself saying that. It's now October 2023, and she's still inside. So I guess the Home Secretary meant business. She's presently serving her sentence at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottingham. Rampton is one of the 3 secure hospitals in England. Broadmoor is probably the better known of the 3, and then there's Ashworth Hospital on the outskirts of Liverpool, Merseyside. As an inmate of Rampton, she began her attention-seeking behaviour again, ingesting ground glass and pouring boiling water on her hand. She lost 5 stone in weight and was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. She was also officially diagnosed as having Munchausen and Munchausen by proxy, or whatever it's called now. She subsequently admitted to 3 of the murders for which she was charged. That was big of her. As well as 6 of the assaults. There have been accusations, most notably by Chris Taylor, who was the father of Liam, Allitt's first victim, that Rampton Secure Hospital is more like a holiday camp than a prison. Well, it's not a prison, it's a hospital. The facility, which has some 1,400 staff to deal with around 400 inmates, costs taxpayers around £2,000 per week per inmate to administer. I like to think that lessons would be learned from cases like this, such as changes in policies, more stringent background checks, staff and medication monitoring procedures, etc. But obviously, that's just wishful thinking on my part. Fly high, little angels. May you rest in peace. Thank you so much for letting me tell you this story. If you have any comments, please don't be shy. Get your fingers working on the keyboard. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's free after all. Hey, that smile looks good on you. You should wear it more often. I've been Sue, TTFN.